Hi, I'm Josh McGrath.
I'm Andrew Haas.
And this is the Ardent Pursuit Podcast. Well, here we are, already 3/4 of the way through January. And statistically, most Americans are already falling off the bandwagon when it comes to their New Year's resolutions. Now, hopefully not any of our listeners, because we set you up for success. We talked about, even before the new year, about the importance of having a vision, not just setting New Year's resolutions, because let's be honest, New Year's resolutions are hard to keep throughout the year. And so today we're going to continue in our conversation about the importance of vision. And Andrew, we're looking at the third area of vision. We've already covered spiritually and relationally. Today, we're going to talk about physically.
Yes, and why it is important for men to stay physical and stay active. And we'll touch on the fundamental reason too, on why it's really important for men specifically. Women as well should stay active, but different topic, different conversation.
Sure.
It's important for men to regularly work out or exercise, and for the men that do, it's important to know why you're doing it. The why matters. And for the guys that don't, it's really important that you start.
So we're going to examine 7 areas of activity that men need to have a vision for this coming year. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. These are areas that we've discovered either personally or through our work with other men are important and good places to start.
And the first area we'll look at is working out. It is important for men to routinely exert themselves physically, not the least of which is for discipline. Physical discipline, routinely exercising, not only benefits you physically, but it's going to show up eventually in almost every other area of your life. A guy who's disciplined, at least physically, sets himself up for success to be disciplined in other areas of his life.
And it's important for men to recognize that they need to understand the vision behind why they're working out, because it can quickly turn into, well, I want to be the most ripped man at the gym. You know, all the ladies love a really toned guy. And while maybe some of that's true, the purpose behind going to the gym is to be healthy, to reap the health benefits that are associated with being in the gym, but also, like you said, to grow in your ability to be disciplined, because our modern life, by and large, doesn't allow men, or doesn't hold men to a standard of discipline. It's very easy, particularly for single men, to not be disciplined. And this is a great area where they can exercise discipline and reap health benefits at the same time.
If a guy is fit and strong, simply for the purpose of being fit and strong, that's a problem. Likewise, if a man is fit and strong primarily for his own benefit, that's also a problem. So men really need to think about, why am I building strength?
Yep.
Why am I staying strong? Why am I working out? Why am I exercising? Why am I doing these things? It's really important for a guy to know why, because very quickly a guy can go down the wrong road.
And there are so many benefits to men placing themselves in a position where they're under the pressure and the tension of hard work. Most of our jobs these days don't require us to be in a very physical, manual labor environment. And I'm not encouraging us to go back to a day and age where the vast majority of jobs were men, by the sweat of their brow, working every day. I'm thankful that my job doesn't require me to do manual labor. However, what that means is we essentially have a very lazy generation of men who don't apply themselves in physical exertion environments.
And for a guy that might say, well, okay, how much should I work out? How many hours a day? How many hours a week? What's too little? What's too much?
Sure.
These are all subjective, and every guy's going to walk this out differently. But a good benchmark to approach this is, how can I minimize the number of situations to which I couldn't contribute? In other words, the goal is, I should be fit and strong so that I am able to help and contribute in a positive way to the vast majority of situations I may find myself in.
One of the things that men, and particularly single men and young men, can fall into when it comes to working out is when you begin to see results, you can begin to believe that this is the most important and most attractive aspect about being a man to women. A recent survey that was done by psychologydate.com, surveyed a bunch of women to find out what are some of the most attractive hobbies that men have. And the number one most attractive hobby that women articulated was a guy who reads. And in fact, out of the top 10 hobbies that women found most attractive in men, only one of them was a physical activity, and it was swimming.
So you're telling me there's no six-pack under that shirt?
No, there is, but it identifies as a one-pack. Yeah, that's all staying in, bro. Just so you know. We're going to continue on from here.
3-hour episode. A guy needs to evaluate how much time, effort, and energy he's putting into getting that six-pack.
It's true. And so men need to make sure that they understand the vision behind why they're going to the gym, what their goals are, and to guard themselves against obsessing over, having the most fit body, being the biggest bro in the gym. It can very quickly snowball out of control, and suddenly you're taking 9,000 supplements and spending all of your income on trying to bulk and be bigger. And the reality is 99% of men don't need to do that. The goal here is to say, men, exert yourself. Mm-hmm. Put yourself under the strain and tension of physical exertion.
It is very important for men to regularly put themselves into situations where there's a physical demand.
Yeah, so whether they're going to the gym, whether they have an at-home gym, or whether they're just doing, body weight exercises, men need to, in some capacity, on some level, on some routine, be working out. Now that leads us into our second area of activity that we want to examine, which is running and walking. And for men, again, I know that sometimes it's hard to get to a gym or it's hard to spend time working out consistently. Something that all men can and should be able to do on some level is get outside and at the very least go for a walk. If not, begin to run on a regular basis.
And I think it's very important for guys, and I'll even say this specifically, if a guy can't just get up and right now run a mile, for the vast majority of men, I would say that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got 2 functioning legs, you should be able to get up and run a mile. Now, it may not be a world record time.
Nope.
It might be closer to the walking pace of your grandma, but at the very least,
You're trying. And one of the specific benefits to running in particular, it gives a guy an opportunity to do something with another guy that's more than just sitting at a table discussing something. Mm-hmm. Men thrive in what they call shoulder-to-shoulder environments. When men are doing something together, that is often a really great environment to have good conversation. Now, if you've been running a while and you're out of breath, not the best place, perhaps, but it's at least a good place on the whole for men to engage with each other.
And we've done that over the last couple of years where we've run together, even in 2024. I know we started out the year late March. We ran a half marathon together. Mm-hmm. Still cold outside, but a great run. And we had done several runs throughout January, February, and March, some indoors because of the weather, but a lot outdoors, some longer runs in the snow and the cold. And we had the opportunity to talk about life, to talk about things that we're going through. And, when you're running, 10 miles, 12 miles at a time, you've got, 90 minutes plus where you're just together on a road, and there's a lot of opportunity for very good conversation to ensue.
In fact, the idea for this podcast came about through us out for a 5-mile run one day, and we were just discussing how there was a lot of singleness in our culture, and what could we do about it?
It's true. And one of the things I love about running is you can track your stats if you've got a smartwatch. And so one of the easiest ways to kind of help yourself, have a vision and stick to that is to get a smartwatch and then begin to track your stats. One of my favorite stats to track is my VO2 max. And again, I'm no Olympic runner here, but it's really fun over, 6 months, 12 months to see the change in my VO2 max and always be pushing myself to increase my VO2 max because I know I'm healthier as a result. And, we live in a place that, we get all 4 seasons. We get long winters here. And I remember that a few years ago when I wasn't running, I'd become very lethargic during the winter months. You're inside all the time, snuggled up on the couch, in front of the fire, conversations, movies, time together. And you do that night after night, day after day for months. And you're just like groggy. You don't have a lot of energy. Spring comes and you're very out of shape. Whereas when I'm running through the winter months, it's amazing just how much more alert, how much more engaged, how much more active I am in my normal life.
Healthy habits beget healthy habits.
Yeah.
And the third area we're going to look at is our eating habits.
All right, settle down, RFK Jr.
We're not going to go crazy here, but what we do want guys to pay attention to are what we eat and what we drink, obviously. Specifically, though, look at sweets, seed oils, carbs, protein. These are things to pay close attention to.
We are an unhealthy culture. I think that if you're a reasonable, scientific thinking human being, you can understand that. And as a result, our generation sadly has grown up on a lot of processed food and a lot of GMO food and, a lot of food with chemicals in it, dyes. And now as adults, you got 20, 30, 40 years of living off of really unhealthy, bad for your immune system, bad for the function of your body, food and drinks. And so it is incumbent, it is the responsibility of every man to be disciplined enough to know what they're consuming and to do their very best within their ability and budget to eat and drink things that will benefit them and will aid them in being healthy and aid them in longevity.
And I will say this, a lot in our modern diet has been normalized. And there are things that we eat and drink now that are normal to us that in no way should be normal. And I'm going to speak specifically to sweetened drinks, any sweet tea, any soda, lemonade, basically any, even like juices these days. They're loaded with sugar, no fiber. And so you're going to run into problems if you have a diet that consists of these in any capacity.
And a lot of men, particularly single men, tend to develop a lifestyle in their younger years, high school, college, post-college, where they take up the habit of drinking really unhealthy drinks. Probably some of the most common ones are, energy drinks. They are loaded with caffeine and sugar, neither of which are beneficial to you in any type of healthy capacity. They give, in the short term, a burst of energy, but what ends up happening is because of the lifestyle that men, particularly single men, live, they end up becoming addicted to these things and they become part of their routine in order to get through their day.
And I would go so far as to say, is there something that you are regularly consuming that you would have trouble giving up? Doesn't have to be addictive on its surface, but is there something that you are regularly eating or drinking where if you give it up, that would be problematic? I would say that's probably a place to start and look at those things and be willing to ask some hard questions.
Which is why every single year I go a couple weeks where I don't drink any coffee. You and I both love coffee, and I am happy to drink coffee all day, every day, early morning, late at night, doesn't matter. Make sure it's always regular. I don't want any of that decaf crap stuff.
Nope.
Unhelpful. But I always want to check to make sure, am I dependent upon this? And I'm blessed in the fact that caffeine has no effect on me, unfortunately. So it's very easy for me to stop drinking caffeine. And I recognize that that's unique. That is not the standard. So for me, the struggle there is very minimal. I can switch tomorrow to drinking hot water in the morning and go without caffeine for the next 2 weeks, and there's zero negative impact on me. That's not the case for everybody. And your charge to evaluate your life to see, is there anything that you're consuming that you can go without, is very important for men to take seriously. And this year, to really walk out and to omit those things from their lives for a season in order to make sure they're not, addicted and or dependent upon those things to get through their day or week.
And here's the thing. We only have so much willpower. And if you are deciding to make some big changes or even small changes about your diet this year, it's going to be very hard to sustain. It's going to be very hard to have lasting change without involving other people.
Yeah.
Your will, your desire for change is only going to go so far. Eventually, it's going to wear thin.
And I'm going to point back to, running and working out, because I used to, throughout high school and my early, years of college, my regular lunch in college was a can of Pepsi and a bag of peanut M&Ms.
You want to know what my diet was in college?
What was it?
I would start most mornings in the cafeteria with a cup of Diet Pepsi and a bowl of, Lucky Charms, Frosted Flakes.
So terrible. I mean, it's amazing that we're still alive, honestly. Like, RFK Jr. can't get in there fast enough. Like, we were...
Where was he when I needed him
literally.
most?
So, we lived like that. But you know what I started doing my freshman year of college was I was going to the gym 5 days a week, 6 a.m. when they opened, and I was running and working out. I mean, I started mostly by walking, but it felt like I was running. And as I was progressing in my ability to run and work out, suddenly things like soda, particularly, was so uninteresting to me because, and this is something you'll hear runners say, they could feel it as they run, because food is fuel. And so your body, it's amazing how when you're consuming sugar and caffeine and all kinds of other unhealthy ingredients, and then you try to start running and working out, boy, do you feel that. And it was through the process of running and working out into my sophomore year that I actually gave up soda. And shortly thereafter, I stopped drinking it altogether. And so now I just have a lifestyle by which I don't drink soda. I don't really eat candy. I don't really do sweets in general now.
And I'll just add a quick aside. We don't have time to go into the details, but for people saying, oh yeah, okay, I'll give up soda, but I'll go to diet soda.
Oh, so bad.
Don't go there.
So bad.
Specifically, colas are toxic.
Yep.
But even if you go, like I was drinking Diet Pepsi, didn't matter that it didn't have sugar in it.
Yep.
It's still really bad for you. Even though other diet sodas, diet ginger ale or whatever, even if it's a benign diet soda, it's still going to be problematic.
And this doesn't mean that you can't have anything unhealthy. What we're not advocating here is for you to become the world's greatest guru of health. What we are advocating, what we're admonishing, is for men to take a look at what they are consuming and then to make changes in order to benefit their health. And some of the simplest changes are just cutting out sugar. Now, maybe it's not all sugar. Pick something reasonable. You got to do this incrementally. Start with no sugary drinks. I have many friends who love, dessert. I'm just not a huge dessert guy. Again, I recognize that my struggle with sweets is very limited and very easy because of just my preferences. That's not true for everyone. And so if you really love dessert and you really love sweet drinks, pick one of them to get rid of, and we'll argue, get rid of the sweet drinks. Those are worse for you than probably the vast majority of desserts you're gonna have. Then, after you've accomplished that, begin to examine what kind of desserts you're having, how often you're having them, what time of night are you having them.
Yeah, start small, make little changes, don't go cold turkey. If you do that, your motivation is gonna wear out, your cravings are gonna take over. And what you really want to avoid is your cravings and your desires taking control of you. And what happens is, for a lot of guys, their cravings, their desires will take over. and their actions are compelled to fulfill those cravings.
And for single men who we're primarily speaking to, you can think back on your days as being a single guy. We have a tendency as single men to just make terrible life and health choices. We will live off of fast food. We will snack on candy and Doritos late into the night and then just go to bed. We'll wake up in the morning and eat the leftover pizza that we left on our dining room table or kitchen table. We'll start the day with several, energy drinks. And then we'll drink more energy drinks throughout the day. And what we'll do is we'll cultivate a lifestyle that is so unhealthy, so really, honestly, fairly uncivilized. And when we're healthy, we're eating Fruit Loops. Yeah, look at me, I'm eating fruit. And I'm like, well, that's actually not.
No.
It's not fruit, right? That is just a bunch of chemicals in the shape of an O, okay? That's all that is. And so if men want to prepare themselves to be presentable and attractive to a future wife, if they want to pursue a romantic relationship, start now by being disciplined in what you consume. Because I will tell you that women do not find attractive a man who lives off of Fruit Loops, candy, and energy drinks.
Categorically, we consume too much sugar, too many carbs. And if you want to start anywhere, start there. Look at the carbs you're eating, look at the sugar you're consuming, and be willing to at least make some cuts there.
And two things I want to add, because obviously we could talk about this all day. Number one, make sure that when you're having dinner, it's a consistent time or time window. Don't be eating dinner at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. at night. Try to aim for that, 5 to 7 window. The earlier, the better. And number two, try and always have some form of healthy breakfast if possible. Now, I am very guilty when it comes to eating breakfast consistently. And when I do eat breakfast, I definitely try to make sure it's healthy. It's so easy for me to get up, start my day, have a cup of coffee, and be content until lunch or dinner. So regular intervals of eating actually is really hard for me. That is a struggle for me because I'm not hungry like the average person is. So I don't wake up thinking I want to eat. Lunch comes and normally I think, I guess I could eat if I wanted to, but I don't feel compelled to. By 4 p.m. I'm thinking, I can't wait for dinner. But what I've really tried hard to do in the last few years is get up and make sure I'm eating something. Whether I'm having Greek yogurt, some type of whole bran or high protein cereal, whether it's eggs and steak, I'm trying in some capacity to begin to fuel my body with something healthy. And men need to begin to do that. They need to cut out all the sugars, all the sweet cereals, all the Pop-Tarts. Put that away. You're a man now. You're not 6 years old. Be responsible and actually begin to prepare adult meals in the morning.
This is a really important place for a guy to practice self-discipline, self-control. A man needs to be in control of his desires and not have his desires dictate what he does, where he goes, what he eats. Now, the fourth area we want to look at is weight.
People are going to get a little touchy about this. And weight is the category, but specifically what we're talking about is the idea of, body fat percentage, muscle mass index, and your general overall weight. Because according to the CDC, as of 2024, 40% of all American adults are obese.
That is not including people who are overweight.
Yes, because overweight's its own separate category. So again, going back to our earlier point about food, Americans are unhealthy. And statistically, if you're listening to us, you're unhealthy.
And the goal here is not to get hung up on numbers. My body fat is 22%, my muscle mass is this. Sure, track those things if it's helpful.
Yeah.
But the goal isn't to get caught in the weeds on this imagined perfect body type.
Yeah.
These are just useful tools to realize, I'm way over here. I should probably be more over here or even over here.
Because the goal at the end of the day is stewardship of your body, stewardship of your health. The goal is not to compare yourself to, the scale or to people around you. It's very easy to begin to say, well, I'm not, as large as that person, or I'm able to do this and they can't do that. That's not what you should be doing. What you should be doing is examining what is healthy for me and really attempting to maintain that, as a lifestyle, not as a moment, not as a short season, but as a way by which you conduct your life.
And for a lot of guys, they might not actually know what is healthy for them. And to those guys, I would say that's fine, but it's now your responsibility to know what is healthy.
Yeah.
So if you can't figure it out through some internet searches, find some people around you who are living healthy lifestyles, who are active, who are demonstrating good fruit in their life. Go talk to them.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that contributes greatly to being overweight, to being unhealthy, is actually our fifth area of activity, which is sleep. So many people in our society don't consider how important sleep, regular intervals of sleep, the right amount of sleep is to their overall well-being.
Yeah, it somehow became this thing where it's like lowest on the totem pole. We can compensate for lack of sleep with caffeine or more exercise or other supplements. Somehow we've decided that we can just give up sleep and fix it with some other stuff, but really you cannot replace sleep.
You can't. And some of the benefits are things like heart health, immune system, weight management, mental clarity and mental health, emotional regulation. During sleep, your body repairs tissues, muscles, and bones. These are all things that the human body needs. It's essential to our overall well-being. And people will oftentimes try to burn the wick at both ends. And so they're trying to get up early to be productive. They've got a full day of activity, and then they're up late at night doing other things. And so sleep becomes the one area that everyone feels like we can steal from. It doesn't really matter. And then what do we have? We have a society of people who are mentally strained, mentally struggling, emotionally strained, emotionally struggling, physically unhealthy, obese, overweight. And we're all like, oh my God, more pills, more therapy. And I'm like, or maybe more sleep.
And every guy's going to have to figure out on their own what proper sleep is for them. The average wisdom says 8 hours.
Yep.
A lot of guys will say that's impossible or that's not me.
Sure.
Okay, but at least be willing to take a long look at how much sleep you actually need. And are you compensating for lack of sleep with other things? And I will say this, for guys who have a hard time getting to sleep and therefore are having shorter nights, there are likely things in your life that are keeping you from more easily falling asleep.
Yeah, come on.
Chief among those are screens.
Yep.
Growing consensus is saying that at least an hour, more like an hour and a half to 2 hours before going to bed, you should be off screens.
Wow, really?
And that is going to be hard for a lot of people.
That'd be hard for me.
Yes, me included. Now that's best case scenario. Now, sure, can I do better? Absolutely. Now I generally don't have too much trouble falling asleep at night, so I feel pretty fortunate in that regard. I can use screens pretty much up until bedtime, and I'll fall asleep no problem. But if I had trouble falling asleep at night, that would be one of the first things I would do. I would scale back on my screen use in the evenings, and studies have shown that really does help toward falling asleep.
And when it comes to particularly single men, I think there's probably 3 reasons why they tend to stay up much later than they should. Number 1, video games, playing late into the night. Number 2, doom scrolling on the internet, which is so unhelpful. And number 3, movies and TV shows. And your point about if you're struggling to fall asleep, get off your screen well in advance of falling asleep is so important for men to take to heart and to apply this year.
And it's not a thing you might see the next day either. This could be, if this is a new habit that you're implementing, it could take a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to really see the fruit of that. So 1, be consistent. And 2, don't just immediately revert to an old habit just because you don't see any good fruit there.
Now, one of the ways you can help yourself is by going to bed at a consistent time or within a consistent window. And so if you're falling asleep, based upon your schedule, some nights at 9:30, some nights at 11:30, some nights at 2:30, it is very hard for your body to develop a rhythm of sleep where it knows when it's falling asleep, it knows when it's going in and out of REM, and when it's going to wake up, which leads into a second important benefit is getting up at the same time or within the same window of time. Again, if you're waking up at 6 one morning and then 8 one morning, then 11 one morning, your body's all kinds of confused. And if you don't believe that it affects you, just look at a child who goes to bed at all random times or gets up at random times and then see their behavior throughout the day. And you will very quickly realize, oh, consistent bedtime, consistently getting up actually is very helpful and beneficial.
And having young kids myself, it is very clear that the ones that go to bed at the same time, they nap consistently, they're up pretty much consistently at the same time.
Yep.
On the whole, now there's slight variations, but on the whole, their behaviors, the fussing, the attitudes are more manageable.
Sure.
Or much less to deal with. Now, kids are still going to be kids, but it is noticeable that sleep really helps in areas that you wouldn't think are necessarily linked.
So one of the things that we're going to encourage men to do is to take stock of their sleeping habits. Examine how long are you sleeping each night? When are you going to bed? Do you struggle to fall asleep? How long does it take you to fall asleep? When are you waking up in the morning? How long does it take you to wake up in the morning? These things will help inform your behaviors and habits with regards to when you're going to bed and how long you're sleeping. Now, we're going to examine our sixth area of activity, which most people are probably going to think, wait, this is an activity? And yes, it is. It is drinking water.
What most people don't realize is that we are all pretty much chronically dehydrated.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I definitely am. Outside of coffee and then occasionally bourbon, I can't say that my intake of water is particularly high.
And neither bourbon nor coffee hydrate us.
That the science is unsettled. I'm going to see what Fauci says. He is the science, and he's going to help me uncover the truth.
I'm not here to take away your coffee or your bourbon, but we should be drinking a lot more water.
Absolutely.
Exactly how much? Well, you got to figure that out. But it's likely a lot more than what you're currently drinking.
It's true. And one of the ways that I know in my own life that I've really tried to grow in the area of drinking water, which just sounds funny to even say, is when I wake up in the morning, my goal is to consume between 30 and 50 ounces of water in the first hour of the day. And part of the way I do that is I have a water bottle, just a 16-ounce normal plastic water bottle that I refill multiple times in the morning, so I can keep track. And then I also have a 2-cup mug. I've measured it that I fill with water, and I drink that. And so that helps me kind of know how much water am I consuming. I do all of this before I have coffee. Part of it's because I don't brew coffee at home, so that helps a little bit. If I brewed coffee at home, I probably wouldn't drink any water. I'd move right to coffee. But I've tried very hard to begin to consume more water. And then throughout the day, I'm a huge seltzer fan. And so I try to drink seltzer throughout the day because that's easier for me to consume than it is just, drinking water.
And I would encourage guys to get a measurable bottle, container, something that's got, the numbers on it maybe. What you want to avoid is just a general sense of I drank 2 of these.
Sure.
I probably drank enough.
Yep.
Try to get more specific because you'll probably be surprised to find just how little you're drinking once you track it. It's easy to think in our heads, oh, I'm drinking plenty. I drank 4 cups of water. But if you actually track it, you'll quickly realize, oh, I actually don't drink that much.
And let's be honest, staying hydrated is inconvenient because you will have to use the bathroom many times throughout the day. And that's actually generally my frustration with trying to be hydrated, is that I feel like it's such a waste of time constantly having to go to the bathroom. But there are a lot of benefits beyond just mental clarity. There's a lot of health benefits. I've even read that there's skin benefits. to being hydrated. So if you're someone that tends to gravitate towards, the coffees, the teas, the hot chocolates, the juices, the things that aren't going to hydrate you, work to reorient your life in a way where you are consuming way more water than you currently are.
And our final area of activity that we want to look at is alcohol and tobacco use.
Ooh, here's a controversial one.
Yes.
All right, unpack it for us.
Well, alcohol and tobacco use do not make us healthier. I think that should be pretty common knowledge.
Yep.
But also, let's not fool ourselves into thinking that even moderate or light consumption is not without consequence.
That is so true. I think that we tend to think as humans, oh, well, I'm only consuming it once every so often. It's fine. And the research is very clear. Alcohol and tobacco is poison for the human body. Now, I'm going to say it's very good poison.
Delicious poison.
Unfortunately, tastes really good. We've got bourbon here on the set. We love bourbon, and we enjoy the guys only cigar nights. Absolutely. But we don't enter into those environments thinking, I'm getting healthier by doing this, or there's no negative impact on me. There obviously is. And we're not going to go through all of the negative impacts. Feel free to Google it. It's out there. Smarter people than us have done the studies and talked about this. But men need to understand there is a negative impact on their body. And for single men who particularly are living alone or with other single men, it's very easy to engage with these substances in an abusive, very unhealthy manner.
And it's very important for men to use wisdom when it comes to consuming these things. Again, we're not saying avoid it altogether, although for an individual, that might be the way to go.
Sure.
But for those of you that do consume alcohol and tobacco, know how much, know why, and know your limits.
And it's very clear in Scripture that we are not to be drunk with wine. And I'm going to define drunkenness, which I know is actually very hard to do because you can't really define it because it is a gray area. It is so subjective. It really is dependent from person to person. But I'm going to define it this way. Drinking to the point where your ability to communicate, your ability to think, and your ability to react is inhibited in any way.
And I'll take that a step further, and I would say, if a guy says, I get drunk at 5 beers. Okay, your goal then isn't to drink 4 beers.
Yeah.
Right? Your approach should not be, I know I get drunk here, so I'm going to go right here. That's not how you walk this out.
Yeah. And while I can appreciate that alcohol in all its varieties tastes really good, it is a vice that hath caused many a good man to stumble and to become addicted to it. And so there needs to be caution. There needs to be sobriety when it comes to drinking. One of the things that, I did in my younger years is I would enjoy, bourbon or whiskey at night home alone. I live alone. And it was just a way to unwind at the end of the day. But one of the things that I set as a safeguard for myself was I would never drink if I was frustrated, if I was angry, or if I was feeling down. I wouldn't do it because I did not want to set the precedent that is a way to alleviate those feelings. I would only drink if I was content or happy. Now, since then, I've even modified that own rule where now my go-to is to not drink if I'm alone. Occasionally I do, but my default is not to. I'm going to enjoy a bourbon with other brothers if I'm going to partake in that. As just a way to, again, guard myself to not make it a lifestyle by which it's part of my routine. Like I have to have it at the end of the day. I don't. It's something I enjoy. It's something I like, but it's not something I have to have.
And if going without alcohol or tobacco for an extended period would be a challenge, that's probably a sign in and of itself that you should go an extended period without it.
Which is what I did in 2024. I did January through May 1st with no alcohol. And it was an intentional start of the new year. I want to make sure that in no way does alcohol have authority or a place in my life that I don't have control over. And while there were moments I missed it, I'm thankful to report that there was no moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have it.
And that's really how we want to model our lives and live out our lives. We want to have the control, the discipline to know when to engage in something, and then have the discipline to say, I can go without it. And sure, it might be tempting, but ultimately, we don't give in to those temptations. And that's really the true mark of a mature man.
And I know that men will oftentimes use the excuse, but drinking or smoking is a way to engage with other men. And it absolutely is. We have had many a great cigar night where it's a group of men just sitting around, enjoying some whiskey and some great cigars. And it is fun. And we have deep conversations about life. We have deep conversations about theology. One of the cool things about a cigar, for those listeners who just aren't familiar with the cigar world, is it forces you to slow down. Because a cigar, depending upon the style, is going to take you 30, 60, 90 minutes to smoke. And so you're stuck, so to speak, in an environment where no one's getting out faster than the other. And so there's this recognition that we're here to slow down. We're here to have a conversation, but there's an activity, because men are activity oriented, that we're still doing.
And be careful not to use these environments as excuses to do something. Oh, I'm hanging out with some guys and, we're going to share some beers. Be willing to make some hard decisions. If that's a decision you think needs to be made, it's really important to be able to actually adhere to that. And not use this cover of, oh, it's my weekly guys night and that's just what we do. It can be a great thing.
It can be.
But also, if you need to go without alcohol or tobacco for an extended period, be willing to give up these things that you might otherwise enjoy.
And you may have a conviction that you should not partake of alcohol or tobacco, or even potentially be in environments where that is being served. And that's okay. Men need to stand by their convictions. I actually have a great friend who lives in New York City. When I go down to New York for work, we get together, we hang out, whether we're going to a restaurant or to a bar, and he does not drink. He used to, and he began to see some negative impacts in his life because of it. And so he decided, I'm going to stop because I don't want this to impact my wife, my marriage, or my kids. Very commendable. So we'll go out and he'll always order a non-alcoholic beer. And it's very funny, we'll go up to the bar together. I'll generally order a bourbon on the rocks, and then he'll be like, do you have any non-alcoholic beers? And so he'll grab one of those. And then we sit around and have a great conversation, because there's still something about kind of the environment of, sipping something together. And particularly, when it's 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, we're catching up finally after a long day of work. It's like, it's a great environment to be in, but you don't have to be drinking. And if you need to refrain, if you need to abstain, men need to have the conviction and the wherewithal to walk that out.
And here's the kicker. The not so secret is that at the end of the day, no one cares.
It's true.
If you go without alcohol or tobacco, no one's going to care. If you got your friends that are like, hey, oh, you stopped drinking, or hey, join us for this, and you decide not to, great. It's not going to affect your life 5 years, 10 years down the road.
And 10 out of 10 times, if you abstain from drinking, whether that's in a business context, a friend's context, or being alone context, there's no negative impact on you as a result. You will only ever benefit from not drinking. I know that our new president, he doesn't drink. And so he's done and conducted business for many years internationally. And so he's had many an opportunity to partake, but he's chosen not to. He's got his own reasons and convictions why he doesn't do that. But what it proves is alcohol is not a necessity for climbing the corporate ladder, for engaging with new clients, for winning people over. It's something you can use, but not something that's required.
And I would say if you're dependent upon either of these for social engagement, big flag, hit the pause button, reevaluate. There's really not much more unattractive. There are a few things, but not much more unattractive than a guy dependent upon alcohol specifically to engage with other people.
That's a great point. And one of the things that's interesting is that men will oftentimes say, well, that's how I connect with other men, through the use of tobacco or alcohol. And if you're dependent upon tobacco or alcohol as a means to be able to connect to other men in a social environment, that is unhealthy. There may even be an addiction there that's beginning to form that you need to evaluate and process, because as men, we should be able to stand on our own ability to communicate and connect with other men that doesn't require substances that scientifically and inherently are killing us.
And this is the list that we had to discuss, but it's by no means conclusive. And so for a lot of guys, there might be areas in your life that fall outside of what we've discussed. Don't minimize that or ignore it. Take that into account. Think about it, weigh the value of it, the importance of it, and be willing to take action on it.
Absolutely. So in conclusion, we want you to do something very simple this week. We want you to evaluate the goals that you're setting in these 7 areas and to understand why you've set those goals, to have a vision for them, because these goals serve a purpose. They're not meant to become your purpose. And as men, it's very easy once we've set some goals for those to be the things that we're living for, rather than those things helping us to live a better, more healthy life. Now, if you're wondering, well, how do I walk this out? What are the specifics of each of these categories for me? Well, sit down with your authority and accountability. They are there to help provide wisdom and counsel. And this is why we live life in community. Go to the brotherhood in your life. If you don't have one yet, well, be building that. Men are not called to walk life out in isolation and to know everything on their own. We're meant to shoulder the burden together and to grow together in community. As always, we love having you here on the Art and Pursuit podcast. We look forward to having you here next time.